we've just come through 17 weeks of the regular season, and we've also had 3 playoff games before we go into the Super Bowl. And I'll throw this one over to you, Sidekick, to kick it off. We've heard some talk this season and some insinuation from NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell that, hey, there may be the possibility that perhaps maybe we could expand the playoffs. Now, we've just come through all of the playoffs. You know, we only have 1 game remaining. What do you think of that? Do you think it's a good idea? Should we go that direction? Leave it alone? Look, we're all rabid football fans. I mean, wouldn't that be the greatest thing in the world? Hey, let's add another game or 2 or another weekend or 2 involved in the whole thing. What do you think?
Well, I've gone on record about this before. If it's not broke, don't try to fix it.
Yeah.
Yes, I would love to have an extended season of football. I mean, you know, everybody suffers from the post-football depression.
Well, we got this week in between right now.
Right.
What do we got? We got a Pro Bowl. Seriously?
But I'm not a fan of expanding the playoffs and adding more teams in, because I think you kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Dilute the pool. You know, there needs to be some incentive for wanting to have the best records and to get into the playoffs. If it's like hockey or one of these other sports where you take half the league and you put them into a playoff situation, I think it cheapens it, kind of.
Yeah. And yet, NHL is considered to be one of the greatest playoff seasons of any sport, even with all those contributors.
And I think it works for the NHL, but I think for football and some purists, you know, we like having the wild card and that. I don't think we want to extend the playoffs and put more teams in.
Jim,
even though your team is 1 win away from getting into the playoffs and you'd like to see them in the playoffs.
Sure.
You know, I still think it dilutes it too much.
Jim, I mean, come on, it sounds to me like it's a good idea. What do you think?
You know, I can take it or leave it personally. I can see both sides of the coin. I wouldn't be against it. Let me put it to you that way. If they expand things to 16, like Sidekick mentioned, baseball's 10 out of 30. The NHL and the NBA are 16 out of 30, so it's actually more than half getting in the NBA. If they go to 16, in my opinion, it actually weights those who are division champions a lot heavier. You give each of the division champions a bye week. 2 of them would get 2 bye weeks, actually, in all technicality. You have the 4 wildcard teams play out each other, beat each other up and what have you, to earn the right to go into the format we know currently. That could easily work. And you know this is eventually going to happen. Why? Television revenue, stadium revenue. The owners are going to be all for this. And it makes each week of the season that much more important. It adds weight to the end of the regular season. Those extra 2 wild cards in each conference, it'll bring more drama. I'm for it. I'll be honest. I am for it. I would not hesitate to see this happen because the NFL has carte blanche. They are a license to print money, and they're going to do this.
Brandon, you and I have talked about this at length.
Yes.
And one of the things that you've brought up to me, and I think it's a valid point, is that if we start expanding things, potentially we're going to see an 8-8, maybe a 7-9 team make it into the playoffs, and then we go to what you were talking about before, the whole dilution of it all.
Well, here's the math. All right, if you're going to have 16, you got to go to 16. You can't just add 1 aside. You got to go 2 aside. The 4 division winners get the bye week 1. All the wild card teams play 1 week. The next week's the first round of divisionals where the wild card winners plays all the ones who had a bye. Then all the winners of those games play, and then you got conference titles. So you really, and then if there's still the bye for the Super Bowl, then they get that. Whether they get rid of that week or not, I don't know. But here's the problem. This year in the AFC, the 2 teams would have been the 8-8 Pittsburgh Steelers and the 7-9 San Diego Chargers. I don't think anybody thinks those teams were even moderately good, and 2 would have had a chance in the playoffs. So, I mean, it's fun. It's more football, but is it good football? I mean, right now, the NFL playoffs, they're the best 3 weeks of any playoff season in my mind.
I agree with you.
So, do you hurt that a little or not? I don't know.
I agree with you.
I can't decide where I'd go.
I would love to find something to be done with this open week that we've got, besides something ridiculous called the Pro Bowl. And I think that
I mean,
is...
the Pro Bowl is a joke and has been since its inception. Let's not kid ourselves.
Well, I think we're seeing the demise of it. I really, truly believe this probably will be the last year. Goodell...
And to the point made about the dilution of the playoffs, remember the Seahawks not long ago, a 7-9 team got in as a wild card, got all the way to the division championship round. It makes for a competitive storyline. And you know what? Storylines are what the NFL lives, breathes, and runs on, for goodness sakes.
Can I ask
But
you?
I'll tell you this, Jim, I was furious about Seattle making that playoff. I was absolutely furious about it.
Can I ask you an interesting question here? If the Chargers make the playoffs as a wild card, do they have the house cleaning they have? Is North Turner and A.J. Smith still employed by the Chargers? If they go into playoffs and happen to win like a wild card game and
Well,
look
I
decent,
think if
what do
you
you think?
add the extra couple of teams to each conference in the wild card situation in the playoffs, you set yourself up for the way teams, you set yourself up for teams to organize and manage themselves a lot differently with more to play for.
Right.
I think you look at things, you re-examine the structure of the way your team is made up. You try to play a little bit harder, you make different moves than you would make under the current clinching of a playoff situation. I think that there are a lot of variables in play.
So are you trying to say, Jim, that perhaps maybe the teams would play differently? If in
I think they could. I think they have more motivation to step their level of play up, I think.
Yeah. All right, that's interesting. If we were to vote on it, if we were to sit here and vote on it as a 4, I, for one, am in favor of expansion of the playoff. Jim?
I'll say yes.
Sidekick?
Sorry, I'm a no.
And Brandon?
I'm on the fence, but I'm going to lean towards no because I'm afraid it would kind of take
Interesting.
away from that first week.
Interesting, it goes
Just real
50-50.
quick,
What happened?
as a fan, you know, we go back 2 years with the Seahawks and the Rams, both competing to get into the playoffs. I was praying that the Rams did not get in at 7.
Yes, I remember that.
Because I didn't want them to have to deal with all the negativity that I felt was going to come because they had a losing record,
right.
and were getting in. So I was praying for them to lose that game and not get into the playoffs because I didn't want the team to have to deal with that, being a young team that they were.
Right.
As much as I want to see my team in the playoffs,
But I think
also
you're
don't
an
want to see negative.
I think you're an anomaly. I think you're an anomaly. I think that the San Diego Chargers fans probably would have been thrilled had their
I
team made
agree,
the playoffs.
and the way it would have played out, the Chargers would have played the Colts in luck. You know, would that have been fair for Andrew Luck to get knocked out by a team that
But as you point out, I think
couldn't be there?
I think, as you point out, North Turner probably wouldn't have minded.
Yeah, this is true. It goes both ways, and you know, I'd have to see it, and if it happened, I'd probably be okay. But I just have reservations a little bit about some, you know, subpar teams making it.
Well, plus you throw the cliche any given Sunday.
Well,
Exactly.
You know,
Right.
the other side of my argument is the NFC side. You still would have had all winning teams this year, so maybe
Right.
my argument may not hold too.
Well, I mean, it varies with each season. It varies with each season every year.
Oh,
so.
obviously, right.
The NFC was a lot stronger and beat the AFC a lot more head to head,
Absolutely.
and that's why the NFC has 10-win teams not in the playoffs.
Right.
Exactly.
All right.